Welcome to EntreProgrammers Podcast, the podcast for developreneurs, the podcast where you get to be a fly on the wall listening to real conversations of three developers trying to tackle the challenges they face as entrepreneurs.
All right, we are live.
Sweet.
Yay.
I was just saying that I just sent a video on the EntreProgrammers group of there's this YouTube video of this father like burning and smashing his son's Xbox. And I told Derick if he doesn't show up this week, and I dropped that in there, but he didn't reply. So I hope he's okay. I hope everything's all right. I sent him a personal email too, just to see what's going on. But I know he's playing PS4 because I'm watching his YouTube videos. So it's most likely I would guess that he's probably doing a lot of playing PS4 and not a lot of business stuff, and so he's probably feeling a little guilty, and he probably normally like doesn't want to show up, right? You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty normal reaction. So I've been there. It's like you know when you gain a bunch of weight and then you don't want to show up at like a family reunion or something because you know everyone's gonna be like, hey, what happened to you? So hopefully he's all right though.
Yeah, I just haven't heard from him in long enough to where I'm starting to worry.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going down there, flying out, and actually really breaking his PS4. Taking him out for a scotch.
And that video was so flippin' funny though.
It is the reaction of the kids. Great. Yeah. Cool. My one time when I was young, my dad took my computer and he pulled it out of the wall and like just like ripped it out of the wall and disassembled it basically. So yeah. So you know what? Before I forget, I got to give you guys a fitness update because I haven't done that in a while. So I think I've cracked Simply Shredded 2.0. I haven't released the fitness program also, for various reasons, but I've been trying to like crack it. I've been stuck really and trying to figure it out. And I just sent Josh like my updates for my weight. I read this book, really good book called The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. And it's really, really good. And one of the things that I experimented with it was that I figured that, the premise of the book is that insulin is what makes you fat, which is pretty interesting. So I was really looking at, okay, what is raising my insulin levels, right? Not just blood glucose, but insulin. And one of the things that he pointed to that had the insulinogenic response is artificial sweeteners, which I don't like, go crazy on artificial sweeteners, but I was trying to keep it to stevia and, put some in my coffee, have a few Diet Cokes or maybe some Powerade Zeros here or there, right? And drink like 0 calorie type of things and eat a lot of like maybe protein bars that are 0 calorie or low calorie with artificial sweeteners. And I cut that out completely and I started dropping weight like crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went down like from like beginning of July and some of this, just water weight from carbs, obviously, right? Because I'm eating more keto, less carbohydrates, but I cut out all sugar from my diet, all fructose and all sugar and all artificial sweeteners. And at the beginning of July 1st, I was 218.9 with about a 9% reading of body fat on the scale. And today, right, what is it, July 7th, I weighed in at 207.9 with a 7.9% body fat reading on there. So
yeah, and it's really interesting because John shared his he went and got a DEXA scan, like the I guess it's like X-ray imaging, right? Or they actually measure how much like the different parts of your body composition. And the guy, he also got his resting metabolism tested, and he's with all the exercising he's doing, he's supposedly burning like 4,500 calories a day. and eating like I've hung out with John. And he eats like about as much as I do. So like less than half of that, and he wasn't losing. He wasn't really leaning out, and so it's really weird.
I'm a breatharian. I actually I just cut that, taking in the living off of the atmosphere.
Oh, there you go.
So that's a real thing, by the way. There are, and I'm not 100% convinced that I know now, man. I just keep on getting labeled as a crackpot, but I'm not 100% convinced that there's not some kind of truth. I don't think it's maybe what they say, but there's a lot of Indian yogis that really make pretty large claims that they've gone for like months without any food, and that they're living off of and I again, sounds a little crazy, but I think there's some kernel of truth to it. I'm not saying that this is a 100% accurate, but it's kind of interesting. It's just interesting just based on my own experience, like my TDE, like total calorie expenditure tested in a laboratory was I think it was 4,300, not 4,500, but it was around there, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no way. And I'm fasting until 5 every day, like strict. Like I don't even say like, oh yeah, I fast until 5 every day, but I have like a handful of nuts or fruit. Nah. And it's like, yeah, 5 o'clock, now it's eat time, and then I get like small, like I don't eat much. So there's just like the guy at the place was like, this, I don't understand this. It doesn't make any sense, right? And he's like, well, you must be like performing wrong, or you must your energy and stuff might be right. But I also had a VO2 max test on that day, and he was like, I've never seen someone like I hit a record for their VO2 max, not on VO2 max, but there's like they test you to see after you're dead, after you're out of energy, after you hit your VO2 max, how far you can make it after that. And I hit like the record, the highest record that they've ever seen on that score. So he was just like stunned. He was like, I don't understand how you're doing this. Like you're running 40 miles a week, you're not eating, and you're not losing weight, you're not dying, and you still have energy. So there's definitely something to it. But anyway, so I think the other thing I did was I'm taking a couple of supplements based on this insulinogenic response. One is berberine, which is just as effective as metformin. So metformin is a diabetic drug that they give.
I'm on it.
Okay, so this totally over-the-counter natural supplement called berberine is just as effective as metformin in tests if you take it daily. And so I'm taking that as well as L-carnitine, which also decreases insulinogenic response. And I'm taking alpha lipoic acid at night, which I'm not 100% sure on that, but I've got my fasting blood glucose levels down. Like this morning it read 90, which I was up in the 110 to 120 range, which I thought was weird. But I'm attributing it to essentially what I'm doing is just based on that book. My theory now is I'm just attacking insulin response as much as possible by taking these supplements, avoiding all of the things that could possibly spike insulin. And so theoretically what I'm doing is I'm lowering my insulin resistance, which ultimately in the book he says insulin resistance, that's what determines your set point, like your thermostat, and determines your fat level. And so the higher your insulin resistance is, the fatter you will be, regardless of what you do, right? It's almost, and one part of the book that I was so resistant to is just this idea. It's almost like victim mentality, right? It's like there's nothing you can do. You're fat, and it's not your fault. But it's kind of true, right? And like I had to like to some degree, right? You know what I mean? But aside from starving yourself, and I've actually shifted my perspective to sort of accept that viewpoint, because I was like, you can't really ask much more than someone than to run 40 miles a week, eat 1 meal a day, right? And all the stuff I was doing, and I was not losing weight. So I can't imagine if you're in a worse skin, so it's science. It's figuring out the right thing. So that's why I've been experimenting with it. And also I've been stuck, but now I'm at the point, like if this works, and so far it's working, I'll easily hit my goal, and then I'll be hopefully when I come back from Europe, I'll be ready to actually produce the program with confidence. Because I don't want to like I was getting phenomenal results when I was first doing this, and I was telling you guys about it. And I was like, man, but if I'm stuck, I don't want to produce a program. And then everyone's like, well, wait a minute, this worked really great for the first few weeks, and now I'm stuck. So if this turns out to be true, then, you know, like I said, Simply Shredded 2.0, Veiny Bastard returns, whatever. So, all right, that's it for my update on that.
That's cool. I'll just chime in here because I've had some stuff related to the health and weight loss, you know, in my own life. So I finally got around to weighing myself again. I've lost about 12 pounds on the keto diet.
Nice. You're still doing it?
Yeah.
Sweet.
But I've had to modify things a little bit because how do I put it? So my doctor, I went to a new doctor and he changed a lot of my meds. And all of a sudden, my blood sugar started dropping. And so now I'm fighting my blood sugar to keep it up.
Perfect.
While I'm
That's
doing
good.
The keto. So anyway, it's frustrating because I'm like, I don't want to eat anything with carbs in it. But if I don't, I just feel terrible. And I think it's just my
so
medicine.
you're going hypoglycemic then.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to find the happy medium there. So I've cut back on some of the meds.
Yes, that's what it is. Yep.
And it's just figuring out
like what level do you start to get symptomatic? Like, so where do you start to feel it? What levels? Like
about 100.
Oh, really? So when you get down to 100?
Yeah. So I when I wake up in the morning, I'm about 100. And if I go a couple hours, because I wake up in the morning, I'm usually not hungry on the keto diet. And so I'll wait a few hours to get something to eat, and then I start feeling really terrible. And my sugars, it's still around 100. And so I'm not sure if it's my blood sugar level per se, or if it's that and something else. But anyway, and I kind of messed up the keto diet over the weekend with the 4th of July and stuff, and I think that's affected it too. But I was tired and sick for a couple of days right after the keto diet, like really sick, and I was like, I don't know what my deal is. And then I was like, I tested my blood sugar, and I'm like, I'm just gonna try and eat something with carbs in it to see if that helps, and it immediately made me feel better.
Like, sure.
So for me, my fasting now is like around 80 to 85.
That's where I want mine to be, because that's where
and I feel fine. So I mean, I think I was expecting you to say like 60s. Like I wasn't sure if you really like completely crashed.
No, I haven't completely crashed yet, but I think what it is that I think the medicine has some other effects on the way that my body metabolizes the sugar, and it just anyway. But I'm just trying to find that balance. But yeah, I've lost like 12 pounds. It's funny because people look at me and they're like, so how much weight have you lost? And I tell them, 10, 12 pounds. And they're like, really? You look like you've lost 30.
and you may have lost more fat. You may have, you may have actually put on some muscle. I mean, it's not going to be a huge amount if you're not doing weight training, but it can work that way. That's certainly not unheard of. What medications are you on besides the metformin?
So the metformin comes in a pill called Synjardy, and so it's got another medication mixed with the metformin. And so I just take the one pill, and it has both medications in it. And then I'm on a long-acting insulin. That's the one I've been cutting back on, and I've been feeling better since I've cut back on it.
Hold on, they're giving you insulin and metformin?
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay, so I'll just caveat. I'm not a doctor, not medical advice. My just crackpot opinion is that if you give someone insulin, you shouldn't give them metformin. And giving someone insulin is like a death sentence for a diabetic. Like if you give for a type 2 diabetic, if you give them insulin, you're basically causing a huge problem for them.
I think so. Initially, when I went to this doctor, my fasting blood sugar was around 200.
Okay, that makes sense.
So all of this was designed to bring it down.
Yeah.
And now that it's down, I think I just need a different regimen.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to go see my doctor in a couple weeks, and we'll probably adjust things. But anyway, he told me to cut back on the insulin and go off it altogether if I had to.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yep.
So
At least he's supportive. This is great because like a lot of doctors freak out.
Yeah.
Well, because the insulin, I mean, if you, and again, I mean, it probably makes sense. And this is like, most doctors will prescribe insulin, like, because that will make your blood sugar go down, but it will make you fat. It will actually make you more fat and make you more insulin resistant, but it will definitely make your blood sugar go down, because when you have more insulin in your bloodstream, it will cause insulin receptors on the fat cells to open up and accept all that sugar, so that they will be removed from your bloodstream where it's really destructive.
Yep.
So it makes sense, but like, it should really be, in my opinion, non-medical opinion, it should be like a last resort type of thing. But and I suppose that they give that a lot of times to people who are not going to manage their diet in any way, and so this will keep them alive longer, although it's going to make them fatter.
I think that's what it comes down to, is that I mean, if you have to choose between kind of the ideal setup for somebody versus just managing the acute symptoms of getting their high blood sugar and nailing that down first, so that they're not having as many of the other symptoms, like the heart disease and the damage that it does by having that extremely high blood sugar or the extremely high insulin that goes with it, because your body will actually generate higher insulin levels too, and the insulin's not good for your blood vessels and things as well.
Right. And just like what's happening to you, the reason why your blood sugar is dropping so low is if you're ketogenic and you're not eating carbs, you're not increasing your blood. There's nothing. So when you take an insulin injection at that point, or insulin, what ends up happening is it's like, hey, there's nothing, you're at 90, there's nothing here. Well, all we can only suck, it just sucks more out. And so that could drop you down to 60 or 50. I mean, you could so I think it's pretty dangerous to take insulin if you're not eating any carbohydrates at all, especially if metformin is already reducing your. So yeah, I would, if I were you, I would just go to the doctor and be like, look, this is what I'm doing. It's working really well. My blood sugar is coming down. I'd rather try going off the insulin completely and keep on the metformin, or you could try berberine as well. You might ask him if you want to try a natural, and he'll know about it for sure, because it's been proven just as effective as metformin, but it's probably a little bit more healthy than, I don't know what the what the possible side effects on the other, but yeah, that's good news. I mean, the fact that you're having low blood sugar, that's a good thing. Once you get this figured out and you're on, is that all you're on, is just the insulin and the metformin?
I'm also on something called Trulicity, and I don't know what it's supposed to do.
Okay, I'm not familiar. I can't pretend like I know anything about that, but
Chuck, one thing that helped me a lot with the keto was so before workouts. So actually, John, when we first heard about this idea, John thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever. This is the 5 grams of carbs thing, John. So, but you can do I would eat seriously 3 or 4 pretzels, little pretzels, and it was just enough glucose that it would spike. It was less than 5 grams of glucose. You can also use one of the little sugar pills, apparently, that are about 5 grams. And it's just enough that it your brain, it gives your brain a little shot. Basically your body will pump your blood sugar back up. And it gives your brain enough of a perception of energy that you feel way better. I was really surprised. It made a huge difference. It's not really giving you enough fuel. It's not really changing, what your body's using for fuel, but it's just tricking your brain into feeling better and more energetic. So that might be worth experimenting with.
So I tested this also, Josh.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah.
Because I've tested, just to be thorough here, this could be like the fitness episode, but I tested essentially a few things. So one of them was taking some kind of protein and a little bit of carbohydrates pre-workout, and then of course post, and then one intra workout. I did pre and intra, and then I did just post, right? Or I did just intra and then just post, right? And so I don't have like 100% scientific results here, but I went by like muscle gain and feel and lifts and stuff like that. And what I was testing recently was taking a little bit pre, and I figured that would be the best. And then, and what I did this week was I said, after reading the obesity code, I was like, that now it doesn't seem like that would be best, because I don't want to actually spike insulin just yet. I want those I can never say catamine, whatever, to be circulating, breaking down fat, right? And so this week I tested dropping the pre, and really even dropping the intra and just doing post like I was originally doing. And that seems to work the best. I had more energy. I was able to hit. Now, caveat here, assuming that I'm already in ketosis to some degree, right? I was running 0.2 on ketone level in blood. If you're not in ketosis to some degree, right? And then having a little bit of carbs makes more sense. But when you're in ketosis, your body, especially if you're keto adapted, your body is actually going to be able to take the fat reserves and use that as fuel quicker, right? If you think about it, and it depends on the workout, but let's say that I was going to go for a run, and I'm not fat adapted, I'm not in ketosis, but I'm cutting carbs. So I'm beginning to make that transitory phase. At that point, taking a little bit of grams of carbs will be great, because it's going to keep me from crashing down so hard. But if I already have ketones being produced and my body's already utilizing that, then what I don't want is an insulinogenic response right then. And then I read a couple of studies that showed that there's a couple of biomarkers that control protein synthesis. And they did this study where they essentially had athletes that ate pre-workout and then before lifting, and then ate nothing before lifting, stayed in the fasted state, and then they checked their blood sugar or their blood levels for this. I can't remember what the exact hormone was, but they tested it, and it was double in the ones that had fasted. So it sort of proved that, like, you don't want to take it, you don't want the insulinogenic response. Yeah, and people are debate on both sides of the issue, but from my own personal experience, it seems like I get much better results if I hit it after the workout as opposed to pre. But what might make sense is to take a few BCAAs or some HMB to break the
just to clarify too, what my experience with it, I tested like maybe 3 or 4 times, and it basically was the difference between just wanting to go pass out on the couch and having enough energy it gave me enough kick to get me into my workout. And that's kind of what, so there's a good chance, I think, it could not be optimal in terms of actual results, but
I think it depends if you adapt to it or not too, right? It's the other thing I found too is, like, if I did the pre-workout meals, like, or even just a little bit, like it's like eating one Dorito. It's like getting on the drip. Like, you take that little bit of carbs, and then the whole time during my workout, all I can think about is getting more carbs. Whereas if I'm fasted, like, I'm still like ready to get some carbs after the workout, but it's easier to sustain. So it was easier to fly off of the handlebars, flip over the bike. When I, it was easy, because there were some times when I did the pre and I was like, okay, let me just have like a little piece of this bread or something. And then I'm like, hey, I'm 45 minutes late to the gym. Oh yeah, that's because I ate 3 peanut butter sandwiches. Or it wasn't that bad, but like, it's because I went and I was like, I grabbed all these carbs and ate them. And obviously that's not good either way, but so fun. But that's good, Chuck. That sounds like you're making progress, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty good about it.
So the one thing I'd say too, though, with this whole thing, like, at least if you want to try something that might help even more, is cut out all the artificial sweeteners. See if that helps. Like, I wouldn't say it, except that I've been doing it, and it's kind of painful, but man, I'm getting ridiculous, just that change alone is getting me ridiculous results.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing at a time here. You know, I think once I get my levels under control, you know, I'd cut back in some of these areas, but I mean, if I lost another 20 pounds, I'd be in terrific shape. And
Yep.
Yeah, I think
I'm feeling pretty good about having lost, 12 pounds already.
That's spectacular. So I've had something really to continue the fitness theme. I've actually had something really weird happen lately. So I did. So John and I have for like 3 years, like ever since I've known John, we've had this ongoing discussion, this ongoing debate where I'm like, I'm doing the things that guys like you say to do, right? And they affect me differently, and I don't understand it, and I feel like there's something broken about me. And John's like, oh no, you just got to do it, it'll work. And so I think I flipped a switch when I did that. Basically, like I did a crash diet about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I was just eating. It was basically keto minus the fat. I was eating about 800 calories a day, and it was like veggies and chicken basically.
Yeah.
And I did that for 11 days, and I lost like 3 pounds of fat. But coming off of that, so last year at this time, I was really frustrated because I was eating 1,200 calories a day, walking 2 hours a day while I worked on my treadmill, and I could not lose more than half a pound a week. And the math said, the calories in, calories out math said, I should be losing at least 1 pound to 1.5 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I felt weak. I was exhausted. It was just a long grind. And I ended up regaining most of the weight in like 4 months when I came off of it. But, so like I was probably like the net effect of that was I was probably eating about 800 calories a day. When you factor in the exercise, and I was only losing, so my metabolism, what must have been super, super low. But so coming off of essentially this crash diet, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to bump up to about 1,800 calories, which should be, I thought that would be a little bit actually over my maintenance level based on what I saw last year. Well, I'm up to 1,800 calories. And I'm losing more weight now than I was last year when I was at 1,200 calories and walking 2 hours a day. I cannot understand what's going on. So like, based on my actual, like what's actually happening in my body, I should probably be eating about 2,300 calories a day. And I'm not that active. I mean, I have a standing desk. I do about 3 or 4 hours a week of body weight type training. And that's really all my activity. Like I don't even get a lot of walking because I work from home. So it's like, yeah, basically there's like been this 1,000 calorie swing in my metabolism. And I honestly don't know what, I mean, I think it's this whole insulin resistance thing that we've been talking about. Yep. And that I just had, I was probably pushing 25 to 30% body fat. So I was like kind of inching my way up towards being, actually overweight a few years ago. And I think like I've just had some serious insulin resistance. And I think that crash diet like basically flipped a switch for me. And now I actually feel like, oh yeah, okay, all this math, like the math that guys like John are able to do, where it's like you eat 500 calories and you lift heavy and you steadily gain muscle and you don't gain a lot of fat. Like that seems like it's actually starting to happen for me now. So it's really weird.
And I think it's a combination of things. I don't know if it's necessarily the switch. I think to some degree it's a switch, which the switch is that your insulin resistance decreased once you went on that extended period of low calorie, of essentially that you of having a very low insulin level for that long. So that probably happened. But I think more so what's happening now, and again, read the obesity code. Like both of you guys should totally read it. It's awesome.
The next book I'm going to read.
Because he talks about a bunch of things that affect the insulinogenic response of various foods. So we use the glycemic index, but that's no good because like fructose, which is one of the worst things possible, it doesn't have very high glycemic index, but it has a very high insulinogenic response. So if you eat a bunch of fructose, so if you drink a bottle of high fructose corn syrup, okay, your blood sugar won't raise very much, but your insulin response will go through the roof, and that's really bad, right? So I think a lot of when you described your diet to me now, Josh, you're essentially eating a bodybuilder's diet. Like you are basically doing what a bodybuilder would do. And so so that's probably why you're getting those results.
I was eating fairly close to this last year though. Like I was basically my diet last year. I was doing the 1 meal a day thing. I was eating a big, huge plate of veggies, either chicken or beef, some beans, and then I would do the one thing that was different was I would do like a big bowl of cereal with milk. Okay, and that was what I was eating last year.
I mean, but a big bowl of cereal with milk is definitely going to raise your insulin quite a bit. Like that's going to. And the other thing that might be like interacting with this, again, it's very hard to predict. You can just test a bunch of stuff. I mean, that's what we're doing, right? And we're kind of optimizing it. Is another speculation I would have now, just based on that the artificial sweetener bit, is that when you're doing 1 meal a day and you're taking all those calories at one time, you're going to have a higher insulin response, right? Because you're taking essentially, right now you've split it up, right? You're not doing 1 meal a day. Right. And so if you're drinking Diet Cokes all day and then you're having the 1 meal, what is happening is you're having an insulin response all throughout the day. So you're kind of nullifying the fasting, right, to some degree. And then you're having one. So you're never getting an insulin break. Whereas now what you're probably doing is you probably have evenly low insulin levels the entire day, and then you fast at night. And so even if you're taking in some artificial sweetener, not going to make much of a difference, because you're essentially you're never having a huge insulin spike to develop the resistance. Or so that would be my guess on it. But I mean, it does matter what foods you eat. That's like the calorie in, calorie out thing. Like this book has finally convinced me, and everything that I've seen, I mean, from like, I'm the perfect example of calorie in, calorie out has to be bullshit, because there's no way, right? But everything I'm seeing now is really painting the picture. And in that book, Jason Fung makes a really good point. He's like, when we decide to use the calorie as the metric, that was a very bad idea, right? We should have never used calorie as the thing, because it's not your body does not use calorie in the same way that and so that's where we went off the rabbit trail, because the math does not add up, and it's funny because I mean, bodybuilders, I have to balance this too, because on one hand, bodybuilders get down to like 7-6% body fat, even natural ones, and they drop their calories, right? And they do that. But also, if you look at it, I mean, I've been on bodybuilding diets. I've talked to trainers. I've had trainers create plans for me. It's always the same. I mean, it's whole foods, unprocessed food, right? You don't ever have a bodybuilder training that's like, okay, I drop my calories down, but here's what I do. I do like McDonald's, and then I do, naturally and get their body fat down.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is it's not just a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. There's chemistry.
Yes. So yeah, and thermogenic effect, like, I mean, or just the idea of that it's a closed system. It doesn't work, because the way that your body, like one of the things in the book too, he was talking about how your base metabolic rate can drop as much as by 40%, can cut. And I assumed, and I think a lot of people assumed, that meant, well, everyone said, okay, well, if you go into starvation, but if you don't eat enough calories, what ends up happening is your body shuts down, your sexual reproduction system, it shuts down your immune system. That's how it's losing all these calories, or that's how it's losing all of lowering your metabolism. And your energy levels, you move less, and that's not true. That's not necessarily how there's a lot of ways that it can happen, right? That and it may be that it's just the storage of fat changes, right? Which is critical, because if if you lose weight but it's not fat, or if you reduce calories, like that makes a huge difference. So All right.
Yeah. Well, one other thing is, yeah, maybe we should talk about business and stuff, but it goes to show that a lot of this is not well understood by the medical community.
Oh yeah.
It's settled science, Chuck.
And yeah, I love it when people tell me that. You don't understand science. There are a lot of things that were settled science until we disprove them. But the other thing is that it also, demonstrates that, everybody's metabolism is different. Take, for example, I ate a certain way and I became diabetic.
Right.
And a lot of other people eat that same way and, they may gain a ton of weight, but they don't become diabetic. And so, yeah, there's just a lot more to this than I think the simplified answers that we see. So.
Well, I think also, just to add one more thing to that, I think a lot of people are not diagnosed as diabetic when they are diabetic, because it's very difficult to test blood sugar levels, like unless you're, I check my blood sugar levels like 2 to 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I check my blood sugar levels so much now that I don't use that little thing, I take the needle and I just go like this. I just put it into my finger, right? Until it completely depresses it to the finger. Like that's how much I do it now. My fingers are like all like, there's, if you could see it, there's like dots, there's like scabs, like little tiny on everything, right? Because I want to know what's going on. But what I mean, the reason
he's
I'm
trying
saying
to obscure his criminal past with needles to the finger.
But you go into the doctor and they do your blood, your workup, right? And it really depends how early in the morning that they test it, right? And what you ate the night before and all this stuff. And so I think that there's a lot of people that are, I think there's a pretty good correlation. If you're overweight, you're probably at least pre-diabetic. Like it's pretty hard to get overweight without becoming pre-diabetic, like as far as fat goes. So
yeah,
I've never seen someone that has had low blood and has been fat. It never happens. Like I've never seen it, but maybe it happens.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and lead us into the business aspect of this. It's funny though, because I think some people are going to be like, oh, they talked about health for what, a half hour, 45 minutes. And you know what? We're here to help each other with life. So
yeah.
Besides, I have the microphone, so I can say whatever the fuck I want.
But anyway, I've been talking to you guys for the last few weeks about my cash flow issues, and I've just been busting my butt to reach out to people. I completely redid my sponsorship prospectus. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's...
Oh no, I didn't see that. You posted that in the EntreProgrammers Slack, right?
Yeah, I did. And anyway, it's worked out really well. I've actually at this point got $17,000 in outstanding invoices for sponsorships.
Nice.
And I'm getting people to start sponsoring both the conferences and the podcasts. And anyway, it's been awesome. Just seeing a lot of that work. And really, a lot of it just came down to busting my rear end, trying to make it happen. So at this point, I've set a key performance indicator, or KPI, to reach out to 40 new companies every week. And I've got a few people who have access to systems that will actually give them contact information for marketing people at the companies that I'm trying to reach out to.
Nice.
But yeah, I've got some leads at some pretty large companies that, it's taken a little bit of time to get the sales process going. But I imagine that a few of those are going to drop here within the next few weeks too. So
I'm going to be doing basically replicating what you're doing after this crazy book launch is over. How are you? So aside from like looking at people that have actually sponsored things like I was suggesting, how are you finding companies to go after?
So there are a few things that I'm doing. One of them is I have a few contacts who have access to business databases, and they've actually offered to help me find contact information for people. I don't think that's going to work long term, but I'm pretty sure I can come up with a list of 100 companies, and between the handful of people I've got, they'll find the contact information for a lot of them.
Okay. So, but I haven't been able to figure out, because you need companies that want to reach software developers.
Yes.
So I just haven't been able to. I haven't spent much time thinking about it yet, but I haven't figured out how do you identify those.
So I have a few ways of doing it. One thing that I've done is, I had Gerald go out and look at conferences and other podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did is he actually went to iTunes and he clicked on each of my shows. And then if you scroll all the way down, it says people who listen to this show also listen to these shows.
Oh, yeah. That's how we do the podcast list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then he would go to those other shows, go to their websites, find out who their sponsors were, and then put them in the list. And then
that's a good idea. Yeah.
This is for everybody listening. This is like gold. Okay, if you're a freelancer and you're struggling for clients, this is like manual list building. People will go like, "Oh, how can I buy? Can I just buy a list of 10,000 people and blast an email?" No. This is the way to do it. So sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. So we did that, and then he also did the same thing for conferences, so developer conferences. And some of the people I've reached out to, they've said, well, we're focused on the conferences. We're not so focused on podcasts, or we haven't done it before. We're thinking about it, or things like that. So anyway, that's been kind of interesting because, I wind up talking to some of these people a fair bit to make it work. And some of them convert and some of them are interested. But the other thing is that as I continuously follow up, I've had people who I've emailed like 6, 7, 8, 9 times who finally come back around and say, you know what, I set an appointment with you because you kept emailing me. Right? And some of them were interested in doing joint ventures, and some of them were interested in doing podcast sponsorships, and some of them were interested in doing a mix, and some of them were interested in the like coming on the podcast. And so anyway, it's worked out pretty well to just build some of these relationships and get things going that way. But anyway, so Gerald at this point, I think he has like 200 and something companies in the list. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm looking at specifically from the podcast sponsorships. I'm looking at those sponsors and saying, okay, how can I classify these? And then from there, I'm saying, okay, well, what other companies meet these classifications? So, for example, one of the podcasts, I don't know how she gets some of these sponsors, but I need to figure it out. One of the podcasts that I've been looking at is Code Newbie, and she has Hover, for example, as a sponsor, which is a domain registrar. Okay. And so I'm okay, well, what are the other domain registrars, right? There's GoDaddy and, Namecheap and all these other ones. And so I'm putting them all in a list, and then I'm talking to my friends who have access to these databases because they can contact people or reach people in those, areas.
Yeah, that's great.
Another one is I just renewed a sponsorship with Manifold. That's manifold.co. And what they do is they actually they have systems that do setup for other cloud systems. And so like cloud databases and stuff like that. It makes a lot of that easy. And so they've got partnerships with these other companies. And so I'm going to talk to them and see if I can get introductions to the marketing people in those other companies and, and just kind of get referrals that way. But yeah, there's a lot of outreach that I can do. And some of the outreach I'm doing is on LinkedIn, and that's worked out fairly well as far as getting in and getting contacts in some of these larger companies. But I'm also going to be talking to my friends who have access to these databases. And if that works out, I may actually pay for access to one of them, just depending on how much it costs and what the upside is. But yeah.
That's great.
But lots of stuff going on there. So that's kind of the way that I'm doing it. But I also had a list of people I was cold outreaching to, and so I've put them all into a sequence in Blue Tick that says, hey, I've reached out to you in the past. I just updated all my podcasting packages, and I got some feedback that I was outside some people's budget. And so if the budgetary concerns were one of your concerns, have a look at the packages and see if there's one that fits your budget. Because, nice. iFreaks at the lowest, at the bronze sponsorship package is like $300 or something. And so I figure that I can hit them at least somewhere close to their budget, if nothing else. And then some of them are like, you know what, I want to be on JavaScript Jabber, and and so they pay out. But yeah.
That's cool. I really like, I mean, I feel like what you're doing now is going to create such a stream, right, that you're going to get to a point where you're at maximum saturation. And then you're going to be like, I got too many leads. And that's, I mean, once you're at that point, then it's like, it's locked up. Then it's a lock. Then you can think about raising rates. But then, I mean, then your choice is, do I raise rates? Or do I just like sit here pretty and keep the and never have to worry about the flow again? And that's a good place to be. But by setting this up, that makes sense. And it's funny because, man, Josh and I talked about like earlier on about trying to outsource sponsorship. We just wanted to hire someone. We were looking for an expert to do this. And again, it comes down to that whole you can't be the financier. You're the project manager or the implementer. And if you get a system in place, you can have someone automate that system, but you got to have the system. And I think it makes sense for sponsorship. But once you have that system, it's like a sales system. Like, I mean, essentially it's sales. You're creating a sales process is what it is. And then you can actually rely on it to give you a constant feed. And that'll be awesome. Because then you can take that whole thing and not worry about it and just have the money coming in.
Yeah, but the other thing is that, and I should actually just show you this. I don't know if I should share my screen or do something else, but let's see. Yeah, it's that one. So I'll just share my screen here. So in Asana, I have basically a Trello board. And so I've got the cold leads here. So these are people, companies that I don't know who to contact at. Some of these are sort of warm. Like I know Mitchell at HashiCorp, and I know some people at Pluralsight. So they're not entirely cold leads, but I don't have like a working relationship with them yet. And then these are the warm leads. So these are people that I've actually talked to about sponsorship. So I talked to one of the PR people at Amazon AWS that I connected through LinkedIn with. Same with VMware, and so I've got some of these other companies that are interested in sponsoring, and they're all at various places. I've also tagged, you can see some like this red bar that means that they're a former sponsor. Yeah. And so anyway, and so the due date here is when I need to reach back out to them. Nice. And I just moved these two over. That's why they have dates in June. But yeah, these are people that I need to reach out to this week. And so when I reach out to them, some of them are in various states, but some of them are cold enough to where I count them as new companies, and some of them I won't because I've got a working relationship talking to them already. But then basically these cold leads are, the people that I'm going to chase down to get to my 40 this week, finish off my 40. And then once they're invoiced, they're over here. And once I get paid, then they move over to current. Nice. Anyway, so the reason that these have due dates on them, even though they're current, is because I'm talking to them about conference sponsorship. And so, yeah, so I've kind of got all this movement here. And
nice.
Anyway,
I'm seeing a lot of companies that are on my list, my cold leads list here. And also Datadog, they continue to break my heart. I have put together at least 3 proposals for them now and had like 3 or 4 phone calls with them. I will get them one day, but they're playing hard to get with me. Actually, I think they mentioned that they were wanting to see how another sponsorship panned out, and I'm wondering if you got in there first, Chuck, and cut me out.
But the other thing that I did, I should probably share that as well. I know some people are only getting this in audio, but here, let me.
I think it's pretty descriptive how you described it, but
yeah. But yeah, so I have the columns for each of those. But I also updated my media kit, and so
that looks sweet, yeah.
And so so the bronze sponsorship includes 4 episodes, 1 social media post, and 1 featured blog post or webinar. And usually that gets people pretty excited because then it's okay. Look, I'm getting some social proof with your tweet. I'm getting some some kind of marketing thing that I can send people to. And, I get the sponsorship that I wanted. So, the silver sponsorship is just 8 podcast episodes, 3 social media posts, and, same thing with the blog post or webinar. And then the gold sponsorship is 12 sponsored podcast posts, 6 social media, and the newsletter. So then you get promoted to the newsletter, and then you also get the blog post or webinar. And then the ultimate is, for a full year. And so if somebody wants to sponsor for a full year, they can. I just decided that like going through the sales process with somebody every 3 months versus just having them on board for a year. I'd much rather just have them on board for a year, even though as the podcast audiences grow, these prices are going to go up. And then they essentially at each level, I lowered the CPM by $5. And so if as you pick up more episodes, you get less cost. And so I've had some people pick up the bronze sponsorship, and I've told them, look, if you start getting traction on the bronze sponsorship, because 4 episodes works for some people and not for others. And so I'm like, look, if you're starting to see results on the bronze sponsorship, I said you should probably pick up another one, because a lot of times, especially with new companies that people haven't heard of, they actually need 6 or 7 exposures. And so if you're starting to see people trickle in at 4, then, jump back in and renew so that we can get the other 4 and see if you just needed me to talk about you a little bit more. Yeah.
One thing you should do too, I think, is set up like in your default I don't know if you send a contract or not, maybe not, but
I don't.
When you send the email or when you bring on the sponsorship, like negotiate the deal, you should have an automatic continuation clause.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too.
So it should be default, like just make it like the default when you sign up for this is it's assumed that I'm going to rebill you again in 3 months or whatever that period is, unless you tell me to stop, right? That I'm going to send you an invoice. And you just have to be very careful how you word it so that it's not, but negotiate the entire deal first and then just assume, because sponsorship is generally a longer term thing, right? So just make it assume that this is what you're signing up for every 3 months or whatever. And I think that then you won't have to have that conversation, and you won't have to, resell it again. And that's something that like we got set up with like Dev Mountain, and that's great because they just all of a sudden, they just pay the invoice every month. They pay $1,000, right? Or whatever whatever the going rate is for that we end up charging. So
I need to get over there and talk to those folks, because their corporate office is 20 minutes from here.
I like your packages. I'm going to have to, this is something I'm going to have to figure out for us, because I don't feel like I have the offers really nailed down yet. So what I find, we actually have a little bit of too much going on sometimes. So we have at least 4 channels that people can sponsor. And what I'm finding is that the newsletter and the podcast, people seem to be pretty sold on that.
Right.
YouTube, they're interested in, but it's like kind of skeptical or nervous about. I just haven't figured out. I was trying to package stuff up in, like you'll get, kind of like you've done. Well, you'll get this, and this from the different channels. But people would ask me like, oh, well, we just want to do the newsletter. Like, what would it cost to just do the newsletter? So I've started to kind of pitch it that way now, where I'm pulling the channels apart. With yours, it's like you're kind of promoting this as a podcast sponsorship. So it's more like the other stuff feels more like bonuses. Whereas for us, they're like actually alternate channels.
Yeah, see,
we don't have like one dominant media.
So I kind of looked at this. I stole some of the format from another podcast sponsorship prospectus that I found online. But one of the things that I was thinking about, and I had actually talked to people when I was at Build in May, was something very similar to this. And so, just just having it structured made a lot of sense to me, so I went that way. But I mean, ultimately, what they want is they want people to come to their website, or they want people to sign up, or they want people to, you know, sign up for a free trial or come to the webinar or whatever. And so what I found was that if I put this together and offered it as a package, like a full package that says, look, we're going to get people to your website, instead of, you know, you figure out how to use our mailing list or our podcast or whatever to, you know, to get people to your website. And so it makes it much more of a collaboration, and it allows me to speak into, hey, look, I think this would work well for our audience, or, you know, if we promote this way or this other way, then, you know, we can promote it to the audiences. It seemed to pay off a lot more. And so, yeah, so then they look at these packages and they just kind of say to themselves, oh, that makes sense. You know, we're going to get this expert endorsement, or, you know, we're going to get him talking about these things on the podcasts. And so instead of selling a particular product, I feel like I'm selling a solution.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good. I need to get that story nailed down for us.
Yeah. It took me a few iterations to get to this point, and I'm sure I'll tweak it in the future, but this really seems to just, you know, hit people where they live and show people, hey, look, you know, we're going to get you the exposures that we promised you. And so,
yeah.
And then the same thing with the conferences. So
one thing I've considered actually is even pricing it like kind of looking at it more of like traffic delivery, you know, like we're almost like we're promising that we're removing the risk, and we're saying, like, you know, if you give me $1,000, I will send 100 people to your website who are interested, or something. You know, make it more of that kind of proposition versus like put an ad in our newsletter. But the trouble is, I need a lot more. I need better tracking around what we're doing now, and I need more volume so I can start to figure out, okay, what can I actually promise people? Because I don't really know, like, you know, there's ranges. Like if somebody advertises in our newsletter, I don't know how much traffic they're going to get. I mean, assuming they're at least in the ballpark of being a reasonable fit for us, I can't really give them a good estimations of how many people they might have come to their site or anything.
That's an interesting, like, I kind of like the traffic approach, because there's one thing to think about here with the whole sponsorship thing is you've got different categories. I mean, if I were to broadly divide it, I would say you've got companies that, and we talked about this a little bit before, but they're looking for results in terms of actual monetary, like return on investment. And then you've got companies that are like, imagine, you know, startups like Twitter, right? If Twitter, I mean, Twitter's not going to advertise on our platforms, but let's say when Twitter was starting up, or similar companies, they don't care. They're not revenue. They're not revenue generating company at all, right? I mean, even now, right? And neither are most Silicon Valley venture-backed startups, but they want exposure. And so it's a different pitch to them. That's why the traffic thing, I think, hits on both. If you're saying, I'm exposing you to this much traffic or this many people, that makes sense, because you could be shooting yourself in the foot if you talk to someone about revenue and return on investment when they're thinking, hey, I just want to get my name out there. And then there's probably a third category of just like high rollers that are like, I like to see my name on a billboard type of thing. Like it's like an ego pump. But I think that your biggest, like your most lucrative cows, the fat cows that you want to herd into your stable, are those big whales that are like, that they don't care, that they don't have a return on investment. They're startups with funding, and they just want to get people on the site.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you can promise and deliver a set amount of traffic, then that frees you a little bit from the concern about the ROI, because it's their job really to make it work. Like
Right.
I can't force someone to sign up and use you and buy your product. It's kind of on you, but I can at least get you an interested person to your site. That I can deliver on.
Yeah, but even then, the quality and level of interest and background of the people that are coming is kind of on you a little bit. You know,
Well,
are
I
you
mean,
reaching
it
the
is,
people
and
they
it
want to
isn't
reach in the
like-
first place?
Yeah, that's true. Well, and that's where I would try to screen out, you know, if people aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just trying to build a high quality audience for ourselves, so that kind of takes care of itself. But yeah, I mean, like a lot of it too is the offer, right? Like a lot of these startups will do. I talk to a lot of people, and they're like, yeah, we do. Like they're trying to get people to sign up for free trials of their stuff, and they find that like T-shirts work really well to get people to sign up for a free trial. Well, I have no idea. I don't know if that is attracting the wrong people for them. That's kind of on them.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
I don't know if I can't. I'm not an expert on that side of things. So.
Yep. But anyway, it's been interesting just to see where this all goes. And then I did a promotion on Newbie Remote Conf where I was giving away some freebies. And I need to finish up some of the videos for that. But I probably had, 6 or 7 people sign up to get the freebies, which also helped with the cash flow a bit. I mean, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to bring my account balance back into the black.
Nice.
So yeah, so I'm kind of seeing my way out of it at this point, and it's just a matter at this. I'm not going to quit chasing sponsorship leads until I'm full.
Yeah,
and then I will probably just slow down enough to keep people warm until I have one open up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The other thing is that I've had a few people talk to me about finding sponsors for their shows, and so I need to figure out if I want to, how heartily I want to force people into a setup like this, or if they're just, it's like, look, I just want you to find people who want ad space on my show, and then work that into some of the packages here. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out as well. But
I wonder if you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I wonder if you upsell the after, right? Because don't mess up your deal and don't make it too complicated. But if someone says, yeah, I want to sign up for a year of JavaScript Jabber, probably a good person to upsell to say, hey, by the way, seems like you're at an all you eat buffet and we just ran out of the mashed potatoes, but I've got some more mashed potatoes. Here it is. So I've got these other podcasts.
Oh, that's true. We could promote. Yeah, we could promote your thing over here too. Or if we're going to do a webinar, then let's get people from these other audiences coming over as well.
Yeah.
John, I might be speaking out of turn here, but I would raise my hand as being interested in being like a referral partner. If you have people like that are overflow, that are just like hungry for more exposure, we'd be happy to talk to them. We can talk about some kind of way to work out a deal, some kind of referral deal or something.
Yeah. And we've got the EntreProgrammers too, and the EntreProgrammer network now that, I mean, most of the other groups aren't getting a huge amount of traction yet, but they're starting to grow. They're starting to, so that eventually they will. And so that's one thing that we can do as well. By the way, speaking of which, we have a new EntreProgrammers group. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yay.
They are Team Wolfpack. So yeah, so we've got 4 subgroups going now. And yeah, I think and I've got a process in place for onboarding group now that I documented. So it's not that hard, but that's good. We're starting to get a little bit of money in the EntreProgrammers coffers. Like there's enough buffer where I'm feeling a little more comfortable now, and we may be able to do some kind of event or something, conference or something at some point, which would be cool. It'd be nice to be able to like do something neat where we could gather everyone together with that money or do something like that. So that's cool.
Yeah, like a hackathon type of thing would be pretty fun.
Yeah. And we could
implementation.
So we'll see what happens, but that's cool that there's another
Yep.
a group onboarded, and yeah, it's actually a lot more to the onboarding than I realized.
There
Right? I was like, I
always
better just
is.
crack this
There
out.
always
Yeah.
There
is.
always is. That's why you have to have those processes in place. Otherwise, it's like, oh yeah, I got to do all these other things too.
Yeah. So I just have to check to make sure everyone's signed up with their subscriptions. I don't think I put that in the onboarding. Eventually, what we need to do is go and open up a bank account and like an LLC for this, so that we,
Mhm.
which again, this comes down to also we need to talk to Derick, because is he still going to continue? We got to figure that out too. So,
Yep.
all right. All right, we good? Should we do thoughts?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, I'll go first here. So this is extremely basic, everyone, but this has been the last couple of weeks. So we've had we have this book launch. This is the first thing I've done in a long time, in a while anyway, where we have like an actual drop dead, like you will look like an idiot and your business will fold if you don't meet this deadline type of deadline. And so what I did this week was I went through and I broke out. I literally listed out everything I could possibly think of for the next 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever that we have to get done before the launch.
Yeah.
And I made columns in Trello, and then I just dropped the tasks for each week because it was hard to see how to sequence everything. And then I went through, I was like, okay, well, now I know exactly what I need to do this week, or else I'm behind. And so I made an index card with everything on it that I need to get done this week. And I'm not going to quite get everything done, but I got most of it done. So, so just, and like every time I was like, okay, I finished up a task, I reached over and I grabbed this little index card and I was like, okay, what's next? And it was surprisingly hard to force myself to work on the next thing, because like there was always something else that was more interesting that I would rather do. But I'm like, oh, okay, well, now I need to format the Sublime Text Tips emails. That's what I did this morning. And it's like I had to do a bunch of HTML, just screwing around with HTML to get the emails formatted and everything, and really didn't want to do it, but it was on my list. Knew I had to get it done this week, stay on track. So, I guess basically just setting it helps when you have an actual deadline like this, but setting your goals for the week and then sticking to it. And I've actually done this for myself on the fitness side too. For this month, I have like an entire set of very clear goals that I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not changing anything all month. I'm just going to work on those things, and I can reevaluate when I'm done. So,
Yep,
big help for me.
I mean, for me, it's just been this week at least. It's just been stick to it. Just know what you got to do and then just stick it out. Some of these sales just kind of came through because I kept following up with people and, kept pushing and then working hard at this stuff. And so, yeah, the other, I have two thoughts actually. The other thought is, I made a list of the things that I needed to quit, and I quit a whole bunch of stuff.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's just been nice because I don't have to stress over that stuff anymore. And so I'm still quitting some of these, but yeah, some of it'll save me money, some of it'll save me time, most of it'll save me at least one. Most of them save me time anyway, and some of them it's just money on top of that because it's paying to be involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't do everything.
I was trying to think. I actually don't have a real good one for this week. I'm all tapped out of
no fructose.
No fructose. I'm all tapped out of thoughts, really. I'm trying to think. Like, I think one of the things that I sort of figured out this week, well, it's just incremental improvements. I guess I'll say is that you fly at a certain level, and then you got to maintain that level, and then you got to look for times like you can't be changing things all the time, but you find the thing that makes incremental improvement, and then that's the new standard. And when you raise your standard, it's oh, wait a minute, shit, you know what I just did? I did the same thing I did last week. Damn it.
Yeah,
I was just about to say, when you ratchet it up,
Yep.
can't do that one.
This is all starting to sound very familiar, John.
Fine, I got one.
Yeah, John has picked out this is his thought for the week for the next 2 months. He's picked it out. After 2 months, it'll be worn out, and he'll have to he'll have to ratchet it up to a new level and find a new thought. You
realize that the level of how much thoughts I have to have every day, right, to put out 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day. There's a lot of so. No, how about this one? I did a video on YouTube on introversion versus extroversion, which I said that introversion versus extroversion, that it's bullshit, and people got really, really, I'm going to say, upset about that. And I actually did a follow-up video that's like 40 minutes long that just came out today, which clarifies a few things and doubles down on the point. But the it was interesting to see how many, like, hey, but there's a lot of self-deception, and it's not necessarily like, it's just, this is what I would say. Okay, this is a thought. All labels are bad and limiting. We need labels in life in order to function, right? We can't say, if we don't use labels, we can't describe things. It's going to be very difficult for us to operate in the world if we can't identify a chair as a chair and identify a whole class of chairs as that, even though, this one has 3 legs or whatever. I guess it's a stool now, but you see what I'm saying? Like, and so to identify personality traits and extremes and things like that, we need to use labels. But when we become identified with the label as it's our core identity, it's a problem. And that because it keeps us from being dynamic. And I mean, this is something that people get emotionally charged to the labels they identify themselves with, and they defend that horribly as if because it's attached to your ego, and it's unhealthy, right? Whether you disagree or agree about introverts and extroverts, you got to realize that it's still some kind of a label, and it's more of, everything is sort of more on a spectrum, and you can be at different points on a spectrum, or choose to be, and really, even your genetics, even your DNA or whatever, you can overcome certain things. Like labels limit you, and they make it so that you are stuck in this one mold, whereas as human beings, we have the ability to be really whatever we want. I mean, we've got a lot more freedom, and we can be a lot more dynamic, right? I mean, if you looked at I'm nothing at all like I was 10 years ago, and very, very, very different, right? In many ways. And a lot of that has to do, a lot of the growth that I've experienced in my life has been, for me, like dropping these labels, not allowing to label myself, right? And so I think that just in general, right? Again, I don't want to like get into a fight on the internet again about introversion and extroversion, but just recognize that those, just like any label, there are labels. And it's the same thing calling yourself fat, saying I'm a fat person, versus I'm currently overweight right now, or I'm an angry person versus I'm acting angry right now, or I'm struggling with some anger right now, right? Those are two so different ways at looking at life, and it makes a huge, huge difference. So, but we are so, we're so charged to fight against this. We want to attach our egos to labels and identities, and we will staunchly defend them because it feels like, because it's ego death. It feels like death to us, right? And so if there's one thing you could master in your psychology, like just one thing that would improve your psychology more than anything else, it's to be able to let go and to not identify with these things, to remove it from the interwoven connection between label and ego, and to say, I'm I am a human being. It doesn't matter what, I don't have to pride myself. And a lot of times I think we pride ourselves actually in negative labels, right? So people that are angry are actually somewhat proud of their anger, or people who have weaknesses or who have, what's the opposite of virtue? Vices. They actually identify with their vices, and then they love to some degree their vice, right? Because for whatever reason. But that's what I would say. That's my long-winded answer. And ratchet it up. Also ratchet it up. Ratchet it up.
Nice.
All right, guys. Well,
all right.
Next week.
See ya.
Yeah,
All right.
we will do it next week.
All right. Bye.
Wanna start a business, but you just know how to code. Listen to John, Josh, and Derick as we figure it out. We are the EntreProgrammers, and we'll teach you straight up to